a while back when I was trying to get an apartment in New York. And for those of you who've been through this, you know it's kind of rough when you have to go before a board. And it was a really strict board, and I really needed to impress them with credentials. So I wrote to a few friends if they would support me and give me references. And I'd like to share with you tonight the letter that Paul wrote the board. To whom it may concern, Mr. Robert Redford has owed me $120 for over 3 years. He will not assume his obligation under threat of loss of friendship, honor, loyalty. I cannot, in good conscience, recommend him for anything.
They were one of Hollywood's most beloved duos, known for their effortless chemistry in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Sting. But behind the iconic smiles and on-screen charm, Paul Newman harbored one deep frustration with Robert Redford, something that nagged at him long after cameras stopped rolling. Newman and Redford, Hollywood's favorite pairing. When Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid premiered in 1969, audiences were captivated by the charismatic pairing of Paul Newman and Robert Redford. The film's success stemmed not only from its script and action sequences, but also from the effortless chemistry between the two actors, who appeared perfectly matched. Their dynamic was so powerful it redefined the concept of buddy films. They were witty and charming, bringing a sense of ease to their roles that made it feel as if viewers were watching two real friends on a joyride through the Wild West. What many people didn't realize was that their on-screen relationship began with some uncertainty. At the time, Newman was already a major star when Redford's name was suggested for the role of Sundance. The studio preferred a more established actor, but Newman advocated for Redford, impressed by his raw presence and untapped charisma. This was a generous decision, one that helped elevate Redford's career to new heights. The two went on to collaborate again in The Sting in 1973, another major success that solidified their status as one of the great screen duos in film history. Off-camera, their friendship was warm, but marked by contrasts. Newman was disciplined and thoughtful, often self-deprecating and politically active. In contrast, Redford had a more rebellious streak and exuded a natural coolness that was harder to pin down. While they shared deep respect and affection for each other, their differences occasionally led to tension. One issue in particular would linger with Newman longer than most people realized, and it had nothing to do with their acting abilities or personal characters. Before we continue, have you ever wondered how action stars like Chuck Norris stay in shape in their old age? We were recently sent a video that he made, and we couldn't believe our eyes. At 85 years old, Chuck Norris is still staying active, working out, and kicking butt. What's even crazier is he says he still feels like he's in his 50s, with more strength and endurance than he had in his prime. He even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He achieved all of this by making just one change, and after seeing his results, his wife started doing it too. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body is leaner, and she has energy that lasts all day. Chuck personally made a video that explains everything, which you can see at chuckdefense.com/facts, or by clicking the link below this video. You won't believe how simple his secret is. Just go to chuckdefense.com/facts or click on the link in the description, and it'll completely change the way you think about your health. At 85 years old, the legendary Chuck Norris has more energy than men half his age. Once he discovered the 3 things that sabotage our body as we age, he was able to find a solution that he now credits with transforming his health. See his method for yourself by clicking the link in the description below or visiting chuckdefense.com/facts. The one thing that bothered Newman. Paul Newman wasn't a man who liked to complain. In interviews and in his own writing, he came across as grounded and quietly introspective. But he wasn't immune to envy, especially when it came to how the world perceived Robert Redford. Newman had worked hard to develop his craft, taking classes, grinding through roles, and constantly second-guessing his performances. Redford, on the other hand, seemed to glide. He had what Newman called an effortless quality, a natural presence that didn't rely on technique or rehearsal, and that gnawed at Newman. In his posthumous memoir, The Extraordinary Life of an Ordinary Man, Newman admitted that he was jealous of Redford's ease. He respected it, but it irritated him too. Redford could walk into a room, do almost nothing, and still steal attention. Newman once wrote that Redford, quote, had it from the beginning, whereas Newman felt he had to work for every bit of acclaim he had received. It wasn't a bitterness rooted in rivalry. It was more of a silent irritation, a frustration that came from watching someone make it look easy when it had never been that way for him. This wasn't a feud in the traditional sense. Newman didn't hate Redford, he simply hated that he didn't have that same effortless magnetism. It poked at his self-doubt and made him wonder if being good was ever enough when someone else could be great just by showing up. For a man as humble and self-critical as Newman, Redford was both a friend and a mirror, one that reflected his own insecurities back at him. Redford's perspective on their friendship.
My wife and I were at a restaurant in Napa Valley, and there was a table next to us with about 7 people, and they kept looking over and commenting. And so I thought, we're not going to be left alone. They're going to come bug me and so forth. And sure enough, this guy comes up on the table. He says, "I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt your bit. We're all here. We're such fans. I just wanted to tell you how much we love your work." And I said, "Well, thank you." He said, "And we love your salad dressing."
While Newman wrestled with self-doubt and quiet envy, Robert Redford had his own view of their friendship. He saw Newman as a mentor and older brother figure, someone who had already walked the Hollywood path and paved the way for others. Redford often spoke fondly of Newman, describing him as generous, principled, and remarkably funny. He acknowledged that Newman had fought to get him cast in Butch Cassidy and never forgot how that decision changed the trajectory of his career. In interviews, Redford has been candid about the way their bond grew over time. Their connection wasn't based on daily phone calls or emotional confessions. Instead, it was built on shared experience, deep respect, and a quiet understanding that didn't need much explanation. Quote, "We could go a year without seeing each other and then pick up like no time had passed," Redford once said. That kind of friendship, rare in Hollywood, meant more to Redford than any role they'd played together. He seemed unaware, or at least unbothered, by Newman's internal frustration. If Redford sensed that Newman felt overshadowed by his image or natural style, he never let it affect their rapport. In fact, Redford has always spoken as though Newman was the more magnetic presence, admiring his wit, his activism, and his enduring marriage to Joanne Woodward. Their mutual respect ran deep, but Newman's envy may have been a one-sided burden, one that Redford never carried. How it played on and off set. Despite Newman's private irritation, their working relationship remained smooth and free from open conflict. Both actors were professionals who came prepared and respected the work. On the set of The Sting, director George Roy Hill noted that the pair had a shorthand communication, a kind of unspoken rhythm that made directing them a breeze. Their banter, timing, and comfort in front of the camera brought something intangible to their performances, something audiences felt immediately. Off-screen, though, subtle differences showed. Newman was known for his charity work, racing career, and deep involvement in causes that mattered to him. He was methodical and often reflective. Redford, while equally intelligent and principled, carried himself with a breezier energy. He could be elusive. Newman sometimes found that maddening, especially in contrast to his own tendency to overthink. There was a running joke between them that Newman was the worrier and Redford was the wanderer. Still, their rapport never truly cracked. The affection was real, the trust enduring. When Newman passed away in 2008, Redford said it felt like losing a brother. Whatever annoyance Newman may have felt about Redford's natural charisma, it didn't overshadow decades of shared respect. Their friendship was complicated by ego, as many are, but never lost its core. Two actors who understood each other in ways no one else in their world really could. A friendship tested by fame. The tension between Paul Newman and Robert Redford wasn't dramatic or destructive, but fame has a way of reshaping even the strongest bonds. As both actors became larger-than-life figures, public perception began to feed subtle insecurities. Newman had long been admired for his talent, his piercing blue eyes, and his ability to play flawed, deeply human characters. But Redford quickly became the golden boy of the 70s, the face of effortless cool and rugged charm. His rise was fast, and some thought he might even eclipse Newman in popularity. Newman was aware of the shift, and while he never voiced resentment, he did admit later in life that comparisons were hard to ignore. He didn't like being pitted against his friend, especially when articles and interviews would lean into the idea that Redford was the natural and Newman the craftsman. It made Newman feel like he was being reduced to effort, while Redford was praised for ease. Newman had spent years building his character, doing theater, taking acting classes, and constantly refining his work. The narrative that Redford was born with it cut a little deeper than most fans realized. The film that never happened. One of the biggest disappointments for fans of the Newman-Redford duo was that they never reunited for a third major film. After the success of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Sting, offers poured in. Studios envisioned huge profits whenever the two were mentioned together. However, Redford and Newman remained selective about their choices. They believed the right project should arise organically rather than relying on nostalgia or box office expectations. They came close to collaborating again in the 80s with a project called A Walk in the Woods, based on Bill Bryson's travel memoir. The concept was straightforward, two older men reconnecting during a hike along the Appalachian Trail. The warm, character-driven tone was a perfect match for their chemistry. Unfortunately, scheduling conflicts and health issues led to the project being shelved. Years later, the film was eventually made with Redford and Nick Nolte, but by that time, Newman had passed away. This missed opportunity became a symbol of the quiet distance that developed between them in their later years. It wasn't due to conflict, rather it was simply the passage of time. They had grown older, started families, and pursued different passions. Nevertheless, they still checked in with each other and maintained mutual respect. In interviews, Redford often expressed regret that they didn't work together again, while Newman, being more private, rarely mentioned it. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite memory of the pair? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.